Proudly sponsored by heshes.co.uk, a fast-growing boxing equipment brand that give 20% of all sales on the branded products back to a boxing gym of your choice.
Hello everybody, it's Jordan reporting for Niche Sports. I'm joined today by Jenna Brooks, a crucial part of Sky Sports' rugby league coverage. How are you, Jenna?
I'm very well, thank you, Jordan. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. So we'll get into the interview then, but firstly, you just had a baby. How are you finding it?
Yeah, I have. So it's my second baby. It's a lot harder with two, I have to say. I've got a 5-year-old and then a 5-week-old, 5 weeks, in fact, today. So it's a bit of a juggle, but it's amazing. It's lovely to extend the family. And Zach, who is my oldest son, he's just besotted by his little brother. So apologies in advance if a screaming baby does enter the room. But yeah, so it's kind of a juggle at the minute because I'm also Magic, which is this weekend, will be my first OB back since having the baby. So it's exciting. But yeah, it's going to be a juggle. But if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations, first and foremost, of course. Moving on to your career, then you said your first sort of day back will be Magic Weekend, and I imagine most people know you for your sort of interviewing and stuff like that. What has been your favourite interview to do?
There's so many. Probably the most memorable one I've done was I was only, I think, about 2 weeks into the job full time. And it was a couple of weeks before we went into lockdown. I was at Hull FC and the Black and Whites had lost to Warrington. And of course, it was that infamous game that saw Adam Pearson, the chairman of the Black and Whites, fire the head coach, who was Lee Radford at the time. And I was due to do my usual post-match interviews. And I'm waiting for Lee to come out, and he just didn't come. And we sent, a Super League rep in to try and get him out. He just didn't come. Next thing I look up and Adam Pearson's walking towards me. And of course, it's that famous interview that we see Adam Pearson kind of break to not only Sky Sports, but to the world, that he had just a few moments earlier fired Lee Radford. So it was kind of off the cuff. And as I said, I was fairly new to the role. So it was a great kind of starting point. But definitely, I don't know if it was my favorite interview, but it was probably one of the most memorable. I love interviewing Toby King, Jake Memo. Unfortunately, he's no longer in Super League. But yeah, they're very fun characters to interview. You never know exactly what you're going to get. But it's also nice to have that personality as well, because often in post-match or pre-match interviews, you get that very cliched kind of very predictable answer. So to have someone like Jake Memo come up and you just never know what you're going to get. So I used to love interviewing him and Toby King as well.
Yeah, well, I'm a Hull FC fan, so that interview that you mentioned first is very memorable for me too. Moving over to the other side of the spectrum, then, do you have a sort of a worst interview that you can tell us?
I don't know if I've got a worst interview. I've got challenging interviews. I have challenging people who I have to interview. Probably the hardest interviews to do are the ones where the club isn't going so well and you've got the coach. You've got to kind of put questions to the coach after yet another defeat. And you've got to think about the questions that fans would want answers to, but at the same time, you need to almost balance that with keeping a good relationship with the coach, and the club for that matter, because I deal with these people on a day-to-day basis, and the last thing you want to do is really upset a club or an individual in the game. But as well, I don't want to be going into it doing soft interviews, because again, when you ask tough questions, you tend to get the best answers. So I think that in terms of like a worse kind of case kind of scenario for me is when a coach has lost. For example, Wakefield's obviously not having a great season this year. I will have to interview Mark Applegarth before the game at Magic, and pre-match is probably not as challenging if they were to lose again, and then you've got to kind of think about how to ask the right questions in the right way.
Yeah, I think that's what people like about your style of interviewing, or how you do ask them more challenging questions and get the better answers. So we also see that on your social media that you arrive at stadiums like hours before kickoff. Can you tell us a little bit about your day that we don't see on the cameras?
Yeah, so for your usual OBs, you tend to get there. We usually have a 3 o'clock production meeting. So anytime before 3, you arrive at a ground. We then have a production meeting at 3, usually lasts between, 20 to 30 minutes. And we just go over everything, all the main talking points, all the kind of bits and pieces that we want to get out of the build-up. We then tend to have like a lunch break or dinner break, whatever you want to call it. And then rehearsals really start. Last season, I was doing all my pre-match coach. They were pre-recorded. So they were done on arrival, which was usually, if it was, say, a 7:45 or 8 o'clock kickoff, they usually get there around 6:15. But now that they're live, I've got a little bit more time in that build up to kind of just get my last minute research done, last minute notes. So yeah, it's kind of straight into it, really, rehearsals. And often we do live crosses into Sky Sports News, discussing the big talking points and what the kind of story of this game is, just really trying to sell it to the Sky Sports News audiences. But yeah, so it's kind of, it is pretty hectic. Even though we do get there really early, it goes very quickly because we're on air half an hour before kickoff. So we're on air at 7:30, kickoff's obviously at 8 o'clock. So yeah, and then there's also a lot of like kind of catching up with people and chatting and planning. Like myself and John Wilkin do a podcast, The Bench, now. So we tend to try and go over a couple of ideas that we've got for that. Sometimes we even record that before a game, which obviously takes time. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I feel very lucky to do the job that I do, because I'd be watching the game anyway, and I actually get paid for it. So I do feel like I've got the best job in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I kind of want to go into sort of doing stuff like you do, and that does lead me on to the next question. Do you have any advice for young reporters that want to kind of do what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't ever say no to an opportunity. Even if you think it's out of your depth, say yes, and then figure out how you're going to get the job done. Because you just never know when the next opportunity is going to come around. And you're always going to probably feel like, particularly in the early stages of your career, you're going to feel like you're not ready. But you're never ready. You need that practice. You need those, you need to build that confidence. You're not going to get on air straight away in the first game you do feel confident. You've got to kind of build up to that. I think it's important. I kind of touched on this before, but you should try and build a good rapport with the players and the coaches. If you're young, like studying, for example, at uni or whatever, even if you're not young, if you're whatever age, I'd recommend doing work experience. So putting, you forward and trying to reach out to different companies, networks, and just say, you're willing to come. And even if it's starting out making coffees or being a runner, just to get your foot in the door in any way possible. But yeah, the biggest one would be just say yes to every opportunity that you get.
Yeah. I do work experience for Wakefield, so I kind of following a bit what you've said there. Moving away from the sort of reporting side and just to Super League in general, what are your thoughts on Hull KR this season? For obviously overperforming a lot, do you think they can go all the way?
Oh, I mean, what are they, third in the table at the minute? I think Willie Peters has been amazing. I think, why not? Who knows? This is what's so good about the season. You don't know who's going to win. I'm in a tipping competition and I'm doing so poorly on it because you just don't know who's going to win. But we did a podcast earlier this season with Danny Maguire, who's obviously assistant to Willie, and he believes that Willie Peters has the ability to be the greatest ever coach in the Super League era. And from what we're seeing so far, I mean, if he is to go on and make the playoffs, even win Super League, what an outstanding first season he would have had. But yeah, I think the new signings have been great. Sean Kenny-Dow, I just love him. I think he's such a He's a brilliant player, even however old he is. I know he's retiring at the end of the year, but he'll obviously stay on with the club in a backroom staff position. His leadership skills are fantastic. I know all the players look up to him. And so, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Hull KR are there at the end.
Absolutely, I agree. And as a Hull FC fan, that'll hurt a little bit, but
Sorry.
they
In
do
saying that, I love Tony Smith. I think he's obviously one of the most experienced and successful coaches in Super League at the minute. And if anyone's going to turn them around, it's him. They went on a winning run, didn't they, just recently? So they've, it's just, I think for black and white supporters, they just need to be patient. And just have confidence in their coach, because I do believe that, he's one of the best.
Yeah, not everything's going to change overnight, but as you say, if anyone can change it, it will be him. Saints, and they're struggling this season. Do you reckon they still got a very good chance this year?
Yeah, I do, because they're St Helens, and what's the saying? You can never write off the Saints, so I'm not going to write them off. I didn't tip them at the start of the year to win. I, in fact, tipped Wigan. And I mean, I think it was always going to be a hard job for Wello, given Christian Wolf's success, what he led them to 3 in a row as head coach. No, was it 4?
Four.
Yeah, four in a row. They're going for 5 this year. So yeah, I think it was always going to be difficult for him. So I don't really know what a successful year for him looks like. Is it going on and winning silverware again? I don't know, but yeah, it's kind of made the competition a little bit more exciting, because when they play, you don't know, like anyone can beat them this year. And I feel like the previous seasons, when you're taking on St Helens, you're almost beaten before the ball's kicked. Because they've been so dominant. They've just been solid in attack and defense. But yeah, this year anything can happen.
Absolutely, and I think most teams will be happy that Saints are probably not as dominant. But I think take it away from a fan's perspective, obviously for the league, it's probably beneficial as well.
For neutral supporters, I think it's really exciting, because it did get very predictable. So I think it just adds to the entertainment factor, and it would be nice to see somebody else win and lift that trophy at the end of the year.
Absolutely. And I saw earlier that someone was saying if a team like Lee or Salford can win the league, it will be this year.
Who knows? Again, yeah, Lee have been impressive, so impressive, and going against the trend, aren't they? The promoted team usually don't do very well. A few people tip them to go back down this year, but yeah, they've done very well. And Salford, again, they're another side that what they made the playoffs last year. They could do it again this year.
Absolutely. Do you have sort of a team that you support or favour in Super League now?
I often get asked this question. My team is St George Illawarra, so I obviously grew up in Australia and grew up supporting the Dragons. It's been very difficult being a Dragon supporter, particularly since 2010, which is the last time we won the premiership, and we don't look like we're going to do that again for a very long time. Over here, it's hard because because I work in the sport. I don't really want to support a team. Because I just don't want people to accuse me of being biased or whatnot. But I have teams that I really enjoy working with. My son, my 5-year-old, Zach, who I spoke about before, he has just started to get into Super League, and he has, for whatever reason, has chosen Wigan. I think because he came to the Good Friday Derby this year, and he just loves Bevan French. So yeah, I mean, he supports Wigan, but yeah, I don't have a team. When I first moved over, and I was working more for Sky Sports News as opposed to Super League at Sky, I kind of went towards St Helens because of the Red V connection with the Dragons. Nathan Brown obviously used to coach them. I grew up loving Nathan Brown. So I did kind of go towards St Helens, but yeah, now I don't have a team.
Yeah, that makes sense, to be fair. My final question, man, it's very cliche, but I've got to ask it. What was the biggest change to life from moving to Australia to England?
Well, I'm not going to say the weather because I feel like every Aussie or Kiwi mentions the weather. I would probably say the accent, particularly working up north and just getting used to there's different like regional accents, which in Australia you don't tend to have. It's kind of just that very broad Australian accent.
Yeah,
So I'd say, yeah, probably the accents and just different like words and phrases that get used, like you okay is one of my pet hates. I hate that, you okay, because often I'll be like, what do you mean, am I okay? Like, yeah, I'm okay, are you okay? Whereas it just means, hey, how you going? So that was probably one of the biggest things for me. But yeah, just the distance as well, such a long way from Australia. All my family are back home and I do miss it, but this is home now, and this is, my newborn is going to have a British passport before an Australian one.
yeah.
So this is, yeah, very much, we've settled here and I love it.
Do you still go back home to visit Australia quite a lot?
We try and get back at least once a year. Before COVID, we were getting back probably twice, but it's harder with children. It's obviously more expensive now, and it is such a long way. And the jet lag, it's really bad. The jet lag,
Yeah,
particularly going from here to Australia, you almost are wiped out for the first 5 days of your trip, and then if you're only back for 2 weeks, it's a massive chunk of your trip. So you kind of need to have at least 3 weeks to go back. And with work and my husband's work, it's just hard to kind of get that time.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really it for the questions I had to ask. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that's everything. Just yeah. What exactly? So you're a reporter. Are you say you want to kind of do more, like TV stuff? Is that what you're
Yeah,
into? Yeah,
yeah.
nice. And you work for Wakefield.
I do work experience in the media department for them. Just
Tell
started
me
that
this. When are they going to get their first win?
soon, hopefully. We're all waiting for that.
Yeah, I hope so too. It'll be a good day when they do. Particularly for me if I have to interview Mark Applegarth, because that's a much nicer interview to do than if they happen
Yeah,
to lose.
absolutely. It'd be great if Sky cameras were there to pick it to see it as well.
For sure. Hope maybe it'll be this weekend at Magic.
Hopefully for their sake, it will be. Yeah. Right then, that's it for this interview. Then, Jenna, thank you for giving us your time this evening.
No problem. Anytime. Thanks, Jordan.
No worries. It'd be great to have you back. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you again for another video soon. Bye.